Let's talk with Gwen. All right, so for my taxpayers who have dependents between the ages of 16 to 23, one common question that you always need to answer for or you're not certain of, and a lot of misinformation is given out on, and that is, at what age do you stop claiming your dependents? So we know at the age of 16, a lot of kids, they like to go get a part-time job or go get a job. And so we think that if they go get a job, they're no longer our dependent. Or if they become a certain age, then we don't get certain credits for them anymore. So let me tell you how long you should be claiming your dependent. So if your dependent is under the age of 18, they are usually in school. High school, middle school, elementary, daycare, they're in school for the most part, right? Whether it's homeschool, whether they're going to an actual building, they are in school. So if they are 18 and under, they are your dependents if they live with you more than 6 months out the year. That means 6 months or 1 day. They got to be 6 months 1 day. So it has to be more than 6 months out the year. And they cannot provide over 50% of their own support. Okay? They cannot provide over 50% of their own support. Meaning, if they have a job, that means they cannot be paying rent, utilities, all those different things. And even if they do, it cannot be over 50% of their support. So, for the most part, if you have a dependent under 18 and they live with you, they are your dependent. Now, I know we get confused because they might work, right? And they might bring home money. But if their money is not going towards their own support, then that money don't really even matter. It don't even matter how much they make, because it's not going towards their support. Now, if it's going towards their support, that's a whole nother topic. But if that money's not going towards their support, in a lot of cases, so they are your dependent. It don't matter if they work. Now, if they do work, what needs to happen is that they can file their own taxes. You do not put their income on your taxes. A lot of people think that you don't. You do not pay their income on your taxes. You do not combine the two. That is 2 separate tax returns. Now, the most important part about when they file their taxes is that you have to select that someone else can claim them as a dependent. And if that's not done, then when you file your taxes is going to be rejected because they've already filed. But if they filed and you selected that someone else can claim them as a dependent, then you're good. They can go on your tax return. They can get whatever money they paid back and with federal withholding, and everybody's good. It's simple as that. So stop thinking because your kids are 17, 18 that you don't supposed to claim them no more, and because they got a job. But not only that, a lot of you think that you don't have to claim, you can't claim them because you think that you're not going to qualify for certain tax credits. Now, for the earned income tax credit, you can claim them 18 and under and still get the EITC if your income is in the limits of the earned income tax credit. So you're not losing on money because they're 17, 18 in the income limits. Now, for child tax credit, you don't qualify. So if your dependent turns 17 in the tax year, then you no longer qualify for child tax credit. But child tax credit is a complicated credit. I think it got confused because they did it refundable in 2021. But it depends on how much money you made, whether it's going to make a big difference on your tax return anyway. Okay? So it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal for some people. But if you qualify in the earned income tax credit bracket, you still gonna get EITC for those dependents. You're just not gonna get child tax if they're 17 and older. And so that means any of my parents that's listening to me, if your child turned 17 in 2023 and you have not heard yet, you're going to lose some money this year on your tax refund. Okay? It could be $1,000. It could be $2,000. And child tax credit is one of those credits that helps you and benefits you when you are filing your taxes. Now, you might be looking a little sad. You still can claim them, though. You can still claim them for head of household if you provide over 50% of their support. And you can still get the other dependent credit of $500 if they're 17 and older. So that's kind of how that works. Now, for my parents who have dependents that are between the ages of 19 to 23, you're the ones that really kind of be lost as whether your dependent should file themselves or not. So this is kind of how it works. One thing is your dependent has to be a full-time student. So at 19, most of the time they're getting ready to go to college. A lot of them go off to college. So if they're going off to college, then you still can claim them, even if they got a job, just like the 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. The biggest component in that is that they're not providing over 50% of their own support. That's the component of it. Candace, your child turned 17 this month, so child tax credit won't affect you this coming tax year. It'll affect you next tax year in 2025, but the 2024 tax year. So if your dependent is 19 to 23, then again, they have to be a full-time student. And they do supposed to live with you over 6 months out the year, but because they're off to school, that's a temporary living arrangement. So when they get from school on their break and they got to come back to your house, then that means that they live with you over 6 months out the year. But they have to again be a full-time student, and they cannot provide over 50% of their own support. So you do have kids there, and I say kids, they're young adults there between 19 and 23. They might go to work and they might make a good amount of money. Some of them are making more money than you, right? But if they're a full-time student, the rule is, and you got to go by what the IRS rule is. The rule is they have to provide over 50% of their own support. And I know for a fact that majority of your dependents, they're between 19 and 23, and they're full-time students, and they either off to college or they live with you still. You're not making them pay no bills. A great majority of you are not. And if they are paying bills, they're not paying that many bills. So they're not providing over 50% of their own support. And paying a car note is not considered in that equation. So you still have rights to claim them. Stop letting them claim themselves and you end up losing money because they feel like they're grown. They're not grown until they start paying over 50% of their own support. Okay? The catch to it is when your dependents are 19 to 23 and they don't go to school. That's a whole different thing. So if they're 19 to 23 and they don't go to school, then you cannot claim them as a dependent, or you don't supposed to claim them as a dependent and receive any of the tax credits for dependents unless, if they make over $4,700. If their gross income for the year is over $4,700, you're not supposed to claim them. And that's only if they're not full-time students. Now, if they're full-time students, it's a different scenario, just like what I just said. But if they're not full-time students, then yeah, $4,700 they make over that, you really not supposed to claim them. Talk about it either, Angela, though. But a disabled dependent, that it doesn't matter what age they are for you to claim them. If they are totally and permanently disabled, they do not have an age limit on if you can claim them. If you're providing over 50% of their support and they live with you over they live with you over 6 months out the year, then it don't have an age limit for permanently and totally disabled dependent. Gag. This is the gag. A lot of times when their age is 19 to 23 and they're working, a lot of them be making like under 15,000. Now you do have some that make more than that, but a lot of them are making under 15,000. And if they file themselves, whether you filed them or they filed themselves, they're going to get the same amount of money back. Literally. So why lose your money because they want to be grown? That's the one thing that irks me so much when I do taxes. Like, why is you letting them claim themselves when they ain't gonna get that much money back anyway? And whether you claim them or not, then they're gonna get the same thing back. That's not the case for everybody, because again, it depends on how much they make. A lot of people think that because their dependent make, like Dorothy is saying her dependent made 30,000, and you might have made the same thing your dependent made, right? And you're thinking, oh, there's no way I can claim them. But what is their age? Okay, how old are they? Are they still in school? Are they a full-time student? And with that 30,000 that they make, do they pay bills? Okay, do they provide their own support? Or do you pay all the bills and they just spend their $30,000 up? Because I know a lot of parents whose kids do that. So it's determined by that. But because your dependent made 30,000, if you did meet those criteria where, you still pay the bills, you still provide over 50% of their support, and they are a full-time student and they make 30,000, and you claim them on your taxes and they didn't pay enough taxes, then you have to determine how is that going to fit him, because he might end up owing, because most taxpayers unfortunately don't pay enough in federal taxes, and I'm sure he probably ain't paid enough. And if you claim him, he's gonna probably owe. He's probably gonna owe if you don't claim him, but that too. And that's a good point too. Like, they a full-time student, and because in his situation you pay the bills and he going to school, you really qualify. But in that scenario, like if they're gonna already owe, they're gonna owe. That's another scenario. I hate to say it though. They're gonna owe if you claim them. They're gonna owe if you don't claim them. Then you still need to claim them, because they're gonna owe anyway. So why lose out on your money because they were gonna owe when they were gonna owe anyway? Why people be like, I can do my own taxes versus going to a tax pro? Because ultimately, as a tax pro, we know the laws. We know the rules. We know the regulations. We know what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. Well, most tax pros know anyway. I don't even say most. Your tax pro should know. But in those instances, when you file your own taxes, you don't really know. So it's kind of like you just doing things, and a lot of times that's why we say don't leave money on the table, because you need to know what you really can and cannot do. So for my parents, make sure you evaluate what's going on with you and your dependent. Even if you have to get a piece of paper and write that stuff down, and actually like, okay, they pay this, I pay this, and put it on paper and put it in black and white. And if you want to be fair and make sure you determine who's supposed to claim who, then that's what you're supposed to do.